Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good to see you all here. It's beautiful Minnesota morning. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. So I'm going to talk about Bompu Zen versus Minnesota Zen. So when we start our practice, I think most or maybe all of us come because we want to improve something about our lives, usually us. We want to become calmer or just get something. So for me, it was something on my to-do list, right? Get in shape, learn how to meditate. And I think that's why we first come to this practice. It's usually not out of a desire for a religious practice. I think most of us aren't looking for the religion that to supplant the religion that we were born into, and most of us, I think, weren't born into the Zen Buddhist religion. So we're looking for progress, some improvement. And there's a name for that type of Zen. It's called Bompu Zen in Japanese. And it means usual Zen. And it means using meditation for health reasons or to get something. And there's nothing wrong with Bompu Zen, right? We all practice Bompu Zen at different points, and I think most of us came to Zen because we wanted to practice Bompu Zen. We wanted to gain something. And in fact, we do gain something, right? We do get healthier. Like this meditation we've learned is actually good for us. So it's good for our body, and it's good for our mind. So, and we can feel it. When we practice long enough, we can feel some transformation, some change. Maybe we feel happier, maybe we feel calmer. So when I first started practicing here, I was taught not to use Zazen to gain anything. And the teacher at the time, this was in the mid-90s, was Shohaku Okimura, who's a great Japanese Zen teacher, still teaching in America. And he would emphasize what his teacher taught him, which is Zazen is good for nothing. He would say this all the time, Zazen is good for nothing. And we don't hear that anymore. It's a terrible marketing strategy to tell people that Zazen is good for nothing. And he didn't mean that Zazen isn't good. He clarified much later that Zazen is good, but it's not good for something. And if you ever read Suzuki's book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, he talks about doing this practice without a gaining mind, is his terminology. So he would say that if you are sitting and you're feeling bored, frustrated, you're waiting for the bell to ring, it's probably at the root that you're sitting with a gaining mind, you're trying to get something. Even if what you're trying to get is for the bell to ring for 10 minutes or 20 minutes to get up. So Suzuki also emphasized that too. It's better not to have a gaining mind when we do this practice. And Tim Burkett, our senior teacher, when I did, I think, my first retreat with him, the first sitting of the retreat, I was trying really hard. I was just sitting like, I'm going to kill this retreat. This is going to be a great retreat. I'm going to sit so hard. And then all of a sudden I heard Tim's voice in the middle of the first zazen saying, what if we just lowered our expectations? Which was shocking because you're not supposed to talk during Zen meditation. And it was also shocking because what teacher says lower your expectations, right? That's not a message we've ever gotten. We don't get that these days. So what if we lower expectations? What if we lower expectations so much that we don't have any expectations? What will happen to us? Will we become jellyfish? And then he did his laugh. So Tim emphasizes that as well, lower your expectations. So why are we taught this, right? It seems so paradoxical that this does seem to help us, but we're taught not to use this to help us. I asked Shohaku about this, in the 90s, because I said, this practice is really helping me, it makes me really feel good. And you're saying don't use this practice to feel good. Like what? Why? And he said something along the lines of, your life is going to have ups and downs. And if you're using this practice to gain something, you're going to be disappointed and give it up when things go bad. And I think he was talking from personal experience. So that's one reason to approach this as a religious practice. And another reason is that it's limiting to practice this to gain something. If you're practicing this because you're trying to improve yourself, you're already reinforcing this feeling that there's something wrong with yourself. Something wrong, right? And it's self-defeating. Just being in the realm of good and bad is dukkha, it's suffering. So that's another reason to not approach this practice with the attitude of trying to get something. And it's very freeing to do shikantaza, just sitting, without any expectation. So when we sit, we can take a break from our ordinary mind, which is always trying to improve things. Like we're hardwired to improve things, try to improve things. We have this illusion that we're somehow making progress towards something. And we want to make progress. And that's what our mind does. It's in our DNA. Our ancestors who didn't want to improve things, didn't worry so much, probably weren't as good at making copies of themselves. So over time, humans evolved to have this sense of something being we evolved to have dukkha, to have a sense of dissatisfaction, because it gives our genes a competitive advantage, but it's not really good for us in here. So we can outsmart our genetic programming using shikantaza, just letting go. And we can give our anxious, busy minds a break for 20 minutes, where we're not trying to gain anything. Your problems will still be there, I promise you. When you're done with shikantaza, the world will present challenges that you can still work on, but we can take a break. If during our break time we're worrying about something, trying to make progress, that's fine too, right? Shikantaza excludes nothing. So we sit thinking about how we shouldn't be thinking about something. That's fine too. And when I first started practicing Zen, I got this book, An Invitation to Practice Zen by Albert Lowe, who's a Zen teacher. I was really excited about this practice, and I thought, I'm going to become just the best me I can be. I'm going to get rid of all the broken parts of me and get better. And then I read, there's a part in this book where he talks about common misconceptions or mistaken beliefs that people have when they come to Zen. And one of them is about changing ourselves. So this is what Albert Lowe said. I'm just paraphrasing what he said. He said, "It's a common misconception that we must fix ourselves, get rid of our bad traits. We can change for the better, but it's doubtful we can select parts we don't like and start eliminating them. We have shadows and light, and we just can't get rid of one part." So I read that and I thought, whoa, I'm not going to be able to get rid of the shadow part? And then he says, this is liberating. It's liberating from the tyranny of good and bad. We don't have to waste time trying to cast out our demons. And then he says, we can't fix ourselves. We can only accept ourselves. We don't sit with the intent to improve ourselves. We sit with the intent to accept ourselves with all of our shortcomings and without blaming the past, blaming whoever, or fantasizing about the future when they'll be fixed. And Albert Lowe says, it can be painful to accept how messed up we feel we are without engaging in blame or fantasy. But we can pay kind attention to whatever comes up. And this is liberating. And I think it's true. It's both painful and liberating to give up. And I think we can not just accept ourselves when we sit, but we can actually love ourselves. And we can love not just the small self, the individual self, the ego self, but the big self that includes everything, that doesn't exclude anything. It includes all of our ancient twisted karma. It includes the whole catastrophe of our lives. We can just love just this. It's really liberating to love your whole life, the good parts and the bad parts. The Stoics have a term called amor fati, love your fate, which I think is really beautiful. And then, as I suggested, doing this practice to try to improve yourself is a trap. Because even judging yourself as good is suffering. Right? It's part of dukkha. Because if you're thinking of yourself as good to relieve the pain you feel from feeling broken, there's no security in that. Because your mind will keep flipping back and forth. I'm good. Well, I'm not that good. I did this. Well, I'm good. There's no security in any ideas about ourselves. So it's better just to let go of that judgment of good or bad. And that gives you freedom. So, a while ago, I gave up with the idea of judging myself as good or bad. Am I a good parent? Can't say yes, I can't say no. Doesn't matter what I think. And that goes for every role that I play in this life. In addition to giving you freedom, letting go of this judgment of ourselves, and it gives you a sense of fearlessness, because now you don't have something to protect, right? If you have this image of yourself as a good parent, for example, then you have something to defend. Then when your child gets mad at you for saying something, if you think, I'm a good parent, well, there must be something wrong with my child for having this feeling, because I am a good parent, right? And then it makes it more difficult to engage with the person, to be kind, to be open. If you have this image of yourself as being good at whatever, it obscures your vision. There's also something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which probably a lot of you have heard about. The less competent you are, more you think you're competent, it's because you're bad at judging yourself. So just let it go, right? Am I good? Am I bad? I don't know. Also, it's inconsistent with reality to say that I'm a good whatever, I was a good lawyer. First, there's no real objective measure, yardstick we can ever use to measure anything that matters, right? To say I'm a good parent, I would need to rank parents from the beginning of time until now on some scale and see where I am. I can't do that. Also, it's inconsistent with basic Buddhist teaching of the lack of a fixed, permanent self. Right? Buddha said that, Nagarjuna said that, Ted said that, and we can see it. So if you don't have this fixed self, what is it that you're describing as good or bad? And someone, maybe Shahaki used to say, maybe Norm Randolph used to say, from when they were teaching here, there's no such thing as a good driver. And that's kind of true, right? Because if you think you're a good driver, then you're not paying attention, you know? So Nagarjuna taught there is no such thing. There's no fixed thing of anything. There's no such thing as a good driver. There's no such thing. Well, you get the point. Also, there's no pride that you should feel if you are a good person, if you're a conventionally good person or if you're objectively a good person. We don't choose to be who we are, right? We don't choose our parents, we don't choose our DNA, we don't choose where we were born, we don't choose when we were born, we don't choose our upbringing. We don't choose any of the factors that make us decide to do what we do. And this is beyond the scope of this talk, but spoiler alert, free will is an illusion. So if there's no self, there's no fixed being to freely make decisions. And yet, we have to make choices and we have to exercise our free will, which doesn't really exist. So if, people don't choose to be who they are. Our past president didn't choose to be who he is, right? We know that. We know he didn't choose to be born into his family and to be raised in this environment. And so that's kind of liberating to see that people don't choose to be who they are, including ourselves. So there's nothing to be proud of and there's nothing to be ashamed of. You just do your best moment by moment. Now, this doesn't mean we shouldn't try to be good people, and we should try to be good. We should try to improve ourselves, right? I should try to be a better parent. That's just obviously true. And the Buddha taught that we should try to be good, right? The Eightfold Path includes right action, right speech, right livelihood. Don't be a jerk, basic Buddhist teaching. And then, Mahayana Buddhism is really rooted in trying to be good in the sense of helping everyone, helping all beings. And when we officially become Zen Buddhists, we take a vow to not do evil and practice good. So we have this paradox of do good, avoid evil, free the mind, let go of ideas of good and evil. So that's our approach, is we do our best, letting go of ideas of good and bad, let go of this judging mind, just do our best. Beyond our evaluations of whether we're good or bad. So, I want to end with statements from real Zen masters. One is Suzuki Roshi, who famously said to students like us who were sitting in Zazen, he said, "Each of you is perfect just as you are, and you can use a little improvement." Normally that line gets a bigger laugh. And finally, you've heard that line before, right? That's why it rhymed. All right, it wasn't delivery. I think we need new material. So we keep going back to the greatest hits and they lose their power. And then just I want to read a little bit from this book, Cultivating the Empty Field. It's teachings of Zen master Hangji, who was a Chinese Soto Zen master pre-Dogen. Dogen did a lot for him. There's nothing. So this made a big impression on me when I read it. So I just wanted to share it with you. The field of boundless emptiness is what exists from the very beginning. You must purify, cure, grind down, or brush away all the tendencies you have fabricated into apparent habits, right? You must purify, cure, grind down, or brush away all the tendencies you have fabricated into apparent habits. Just expand and illuminate the original truth, unconcerned by external conditions. That's what we do. Just expand and illuminate the original truth, unconcerned by external conditions. The practice of true reality is simply to sit serenely in silent introspection. When you have fathomed this, you cannot be turned around by external causes and conditions. Spacious and content, without confusion from inner thoughts of grasping. Effectively overcome habitual behavior and realize the self that is not possessed by emotions. You must be broad-minded without relying on others. Bright and penetrating, you can immediately return, accord, and respond to deal with events. Facing everything, let go and attain stability. Stay with that just as that, stay with this just as this. So that's our practice. Easy peasy, right? Sit, let it go. Okay, that was my talk. Thank you. And now, the floor is open for rebuttal. Yes.
I'm sure you have one thing. It was interesting as before you said, you did a kind of transition and you said, it doesn't mean we can't improve ourselves. So I began to think, I'm going to ask him that question. What you've said so far, beautiful job of saying, don't criticize yourself. But then you did the segue and you said, but it doesn't mean we can't try to improve. And so you said them both, but isn't there a kind of contradiction still? I kind of turned it over. Of course, I'm married 55 years, I'm a parent, I'm a long-time Zen student, I study Vishahaku. So I struggle with this myself. You kind of touched on something that fits me very well. That, how good am I as a husband? How good am I as a father? How good is my practice? This is one of those cases maybe where both things are true. I do need to keep working on being a husband after 55 years. My wife once told me, I said, I'll be glad when the kids are in their 20s and I can give up this father stuff. My wife said, you will always be a father till the day you die. She's never said anything so strenuous. So this has been a Zen practice student. We're fine as we are, but till the day we die, we work on improving.
Yes, yes. Both things are true. And that's why it's a paradox. A paradox means inconsistent things are true. And our mind isn't comfortable with paradoxes. Zen doesn't shy away from paradox. And I think what's going on is our mind creates the paradox. Because our minds, our consciousness breaks up reality into various ideas. And whenever you have one idea, necessarily you're implying the opposite idea. You can never have an idea that doesn't imply the existence of not that. And I think we can't escape paradox, but the problem, it's not really a problem, but the cause is our minds. And what we can do is just let go of trying to make it all consistent and just accept the paradox. Right? We don't have to come up with a unified theory that makes quantum mechanics and classical physics work. They're never going to do it. Spoiler alert again. It's never, because our minds are what's creating the paradox. That's what I think anyway. What do I know? I'm not a physicist.
Creating the paradise.
This reminds me of the phrase or heard here. You're perfect, and you could use a little work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I've heard that. Yes, it's true.
Wayne, can you hear questions from the? No, answers my question.
This talk was really good for me. It actually goes right along with a book that I'm reading called Radical Acceptance by Tara Brock. And wow, we could be teaching that book. But one of the things that has occurred to me, well, and I was kind of mentioned in that book, is like our whole society is kind of focused on the you must improve side of the paradox. Like everything we do in raising children and managing and leading groups of people, it's always about trying to change people's behavior and help them improve. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts of how we deal with that, that our whole society is, as I said, kind of on the improvement side of the paradox, and many people haven't even thought of the other side.
Yeah, well, I think the way we do it, Tanya, is we do it in here. So our practice isn't dependent on anything. It isn't dependent on society agreeing with us, anyone agreeing with us. It doesn't depend on changing society, on society getting the message. It's dependent on nothing. It's here. So we can do what we have to do in society, but still carry this with us, our Zen practice with us. And I always think of the line by the great philosopher, singer Billy Bragg, who says, start your own revolution, cut out the middleman. Right? So we're cultural revolutionaries in here. So as long as you have this in here, this, what you're learning from radical acceptance, you take it with you. It's not dependent on anything. It's not dependent on Bernie telling you it doesn't make sense. It's not dependent on a teacher. It's here. And no one can take it away from you.
The notion that society really puts an emphasis on being improving and being the best, which really came through really clearly in the Olympics, and how destructive it can be. I mean, with Simone Biles and just tremendous pressure she was under and how it just kind of destroyed her for a few minutes. And then the Japanese athletes who got silver medals and had to apologize to the whole society that they didn't get gold. I mean, it's just it's an example of this power of trying to be best. It doesn't work.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, there should be a Zen Olympics. Like the medal platform is empty, so
Or full.
yeah. Yeah, all societies, I think, are so, all modern societies are captivated with the idea of progress, and progress is an illusion, right? If you've read the book *Sapiens* by the person whose name I can never remember, who talks about how humans were probably happier as hunter-gatherers. We didn't choose to develop agriculture. Once it developed, we're stuck with it, and now we have this whole catastrophe of homes, mortgages. Is it progress? Who's to say? We live longer, but are we happier?
Yeah, one of the things you touched on in your talk was letting go of judgment, and I think that a lot of it comes back to an issue of judgment or judging, which is probably one of the greatest challenges of Zen for me personally, but it always starts with ourselves. You know, the whole thing about if you're not good enough, you know, you can improve, and then of course I extrapolate that out to everybody around me. None of you actually are good enough. Yeah. I mean, and it's all pervasive. And that I think is the beauty of Zen too, where we're being told, just as you are. And there's a saying about the lintel of Dharma field, and it says, it's actually a quote from Rumi, and it says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field, and I'll meet you there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Steve Hagen got that from Rumi. I think it is beautiful. Yeah. And I think just acknowledging that we're terrible judges is very liberating. We have a bias toward judging things negatively, but I'm reminded of that other famous philosopher or musician, Jerry Garcia, who was interviewed on film, and he talked about after a performance he was so mad at the bass player Phil Lesh that he threw him down the flight of stairs, and Jerry was horrified about what he had done. Like, this is his best buddy, but he thought Phil had played so poorly during the performance that he threw him down the flight of stairs. And then Jerry says, afterwards I listened to the tapes, and Phil was fabulous. And the tapes actually made it onto their album, Live Dead. So Jerry said, after that I realized, you know, who cares what I think? Like, I'm not going to be the judge anymore. So, Jerry Garcia, Billy Bragg, Hanji, and Suzuki Roshi, I think are all trying to say the same thing.